Also calling for a fare increase with conditions is the Pioneer Institute. The policy group says it would support the proposed increase of 6.3% only if the T makes some changes, such as differential pricing and better fare collection. To explain is the Institute's director, the executive director rather, Jim Stergios. Jim, thank you very much for being with us.
It's good to be with you.
I want to start with the tone of the recommendations here, which is that unlike the last time around, you said that T has earned an increase this time. What have they done?
Well, look, if you look at the data in terms of on-time performance, you take a look at how much they've actually put into the system to fix the core system, do system upgrades rather than expansions. I'll give you two perspectives on this. The on-time data is getting better and better by increments. Okay, that's not an easy thing to do, but it's not nearly what we need. So that's why we couch the recommendation as saying a very sort of modest level of support here. The second thing is, look, in 2014, before Snowmageddon, we were putting about $425 million a year into the system, into the core system upgrades and maintenance. This past year, we passed $1.1 billion of investment in the T. Now, I think anyone who looks at those two numbers says, not at 3 times what you were spending before, but that level of spend means there's real attention being put to the T. And in fact, over the next 5 years, we're expecting at least $1.5 billion per year to be invested, hopefully getting to about $8+ billion over a 5-year period. That, to me, says that they're taking seriously, we need to get the system back on track. So together with some modest improvement in terms of performance, we think they have earned it.
You do have some ideas about changes in fare collection and how to assess the fares, too. How would that help?
So there are a couple of things. There's a group called Transit Matters, another one called Transportation for Massachusetts, and they both came out with what we think is a very sensible idea, which is sort of taking off where Seattle, a reform that Seattle put into place recently, which is this. There are a lot of people who have to get on one mode and then transfer to a different mode. And if they have to each time pay something more, that is a little unfair in the sense that if you could buy a 3-hour ticket and price things a little bit more, thinking about the customer's needs, that would be better for everybody. But also, those riders tend to be people who are on the lower end of the income scale. So we're trying to make sure that if there's a fare increase, you're not impacting people who don't have as much in the way of means. Second thing is, look, the T's job is to get more fannies in the seats, right? You want people paying fares and getting off the road. We all know what the congestion challenges are. So the T has to think about its pricing in a market-based way. We don't want to price it in a way that everyone gets a 6.3% increase, and therefore some people tip out of the T vehicles and they go into their cars again. That's the last thing that we want. So there has to be much more attention to what will the market bear, what do people need, and that goes for parking, that goes for transit services. That's just a more professional way to do these things. And frankly, around the world, we see that all over the place.
Chris, we're also confronted with this decrease in ridership over the past few years. You say the T has been starting to improve.
Yep.
We have more job growth, more population growth. So why is ridership going down?
This is not just Massachusetts. This is everywhere. This is competition. This is a lot of TNCs, the Ubers and Lyfts of the world that, you know, if it's a cold day like today, and I know that you enjoy cold weather, Chris, but I sure don't. If I have to pay $5 and avoid running to the T, waiting for the train, and I can get there on time, I probably would prefer to do that. I have some means to be able to do that. Some other people may not have those means, but I think a lot of people working downtown, that's definitely the case. The T will be, and there is no denying this, the T will be in competition with new market entrants because of technology increasingly over the next 10, 20 years. It's not going to stop with the Ubers. It's not going to stop with the Lyfts. And so what we need to have is a system that is able to compete not on price, because it's a subsidized service, and it should be because it takes cars off the road. We all recognize that. No one asks for the T to pay for itself. But it needs to be a leaner, meaner machine that can move people around. And that's why I think the attention to cost effectiveness, but also that means we have to think about how we price these things to make sure we're attracting people to the service.
I guess this is not just about supply and demand and cost, because what I see with the younger generation, this is a totally different market mentality. They want control, they want information, they want it on the app. Yep. How can the T compete with that?
Well, look, I think the T, my personal view is that the commuter rail system is going to have a real lift going forward in terms of its ability to compete with these kinds of services, especially with automated vehicles coming and point-to-point service, and it's on your phone and you move and you get in. I mean, already if you take a look at the travel time, if you live in Metro West, many times it's faster even today with congestion to drive, okay? That's a world in which the T loses. What we think is really investing in the core subway system is essential, but then we have to really break some eggs. And what I mean by that is we're going to have to rethink how we provide commuter rail services. The old big locomotive, you know, the way we've scheduled these trains, that stuff is going to have to stop. There's going to have to be a lot of offerings in the way of bus rapid transit. We really do need a total rethink. Some of this will be uncomfortable, and some of it may require dedicated lanes, because everyone knows that bus rapid transit, in a world in which you're competing with vehicles cutting in and out of you, that's not going to work. That's not for the faint of heart. I don't know that culturally the T can get there in the short term. If they don't get there over the next 10 years, I think we're going to see even more dissipation in the ridership.
Of course, right now we have this proposal for increasing fares in the T. 5 years ago, we capped the increase in the gas tax. We've had ideas about congestion pricing for motor vehicles. Should this all be about the T revenue? Should we be looking at a wider picture here too?
We should absolutely be looking at a wider picture. I think in the immediate term, we should be looking this. I think the governor is right on this. I don't agree with everything the governor is proposing in the Future of Transportation Commission. However, I think he is right. We should be looking at the T right now because there are many things that we could do at the T to make it more competitive. Look, we're throwing away $42 million a year by not collecting fares on the commuter rail. Our pension system is going to, it's gone from a $40 million diversion of revenue, of funds from the operating budget to, will it be $140 million just to keep the pension system whole within the next 3 years. We do have to think about the T as an entity itself, but the bigger picture is, yes, we should be doing congestion pricing. Yes, we should be thinking about how we pay for alterations to our transit system, including dedicated lanes. How do we pay for that? And that's going to have to come from different sources of revenues.
I spent 3 minutes, just 3 minutes, waiting for a red line train once at a station. I saw two people use a very simple maneuver to get through the fare gate without paying. How much is that happening throughout the system, you think?
You know, I actually don't know the answer to that. What I would say is, what I do know is that on the commuter rail, it's about $42 million a year just in non-collection. Some of that's evasion, but the major part of that is the folks aren't collecting it. You have your ticket out and you can sometimes ride and ride and ride. That's a huge issue on the commuter rail. I'm a little less concerned about it within the subway system. I think we have better systems there. But that's from experience, and I've not looked at the question, Chris, from a researcher's perspective, so I don't want to bloviate.
What about the efficiency of collection? I mean, there was an experiment in the Silver Line. They found out that, yes, the free rides didn't bring in any revenue, but the service was a lot better.
Yeah, sure, it was a lot better. I mean, look, I think we should be experimenting with a whole bunch of different things. Our view on this, and we will be doing some research on this over the coming year, is we need to think about what economists call price elasticity, and that is, let's think about how we meet the market with the demand where it is and make sure that we increase ridership while we're also thinking about revenues, try to balance those two. Right now we have a pretty monolithic system where people pay the same amount to do different things. And I just think that we have to think about, do surveys of people. The T actually collects this information. They're just not operationalizing. They're not using it to set the prices in a way that they could. And I think they should do more of that.
This has been the news, and we're talking with Jim Stergios from the Pioneer Institute. Jim, another thing you looked at is the MBTA pension fund, and a lot of viewers might be saying, what does pension fund money have to do with the cost of riding the T?
Yeah, so it has a lot to do with it. Unfortunately, the pension system should be self-sustaining. I mean, that's the way these things are generally built. And instead, what we've had is underperformance at the MBTA pension system. They used to be 97% funded, which meant that if I was a T employee, I could be very confident I retire and I'll get the money. Right now, they're they're north of 50%, but below 60% funded. That's a decline over 10 years. Chris, these are some of the 10 of the best years in the marketplace, and they've decimated their pension system. What it means for riders is this. There's the fare hike will probably raise about $37 to $40 million, okay? Over the next 3 years, because we have to make up for poor performance of the investments and the management of the T pension system, we're gonna have to put $40 million on top of what we're currently paying to make them whole, That means that none of the dollars, not a cent, will go to upgrades and maintenance, which is what the T is promising. So the reason why we condition our support of the fare hike on this question is, look, if you're just going to raise fares on people to pay for pensions that are badly administered, that doesn't make any sense to me. There's a really simple solution, and everyone's known what it is from the beginning. We have a wonderfully run state pension system. It is one of the most professional pension systems in the country, with some of the best returns. Take the T pension system, give it to them. It would do a lot.
Of course, one of the things we've been waiting for quite a while now are new trains on the Orange Line and the Red Line. Take us a little bit into the future. What do you see a couple of years from now as far as service?
Look, we are very bullish on this. Our organization has always said to the T for the past 3 years, your primary goal is to increase ridership. That has to be your primary driving goal, how you organize all of your thinking, because it drives good customer service, it drives how you set fares, it drives everything. The Red Line currently has distances between trains of a certain order, about 6 minutes, and it's designed to have 3-minute distances between trains, which essentially means you could run twice as many trains, which theoretically means you could put twice as many people on the trains and serve them. With the new cars that Governor Patrick ordered that are going to be coming online over the next 18 to 24 months, and then the upgrades the Baker administration has put in place, about $300 million they're investing in Orange Line and Red Line improvements in rail stock, in switches, in signals. You should theoretically be able to reach the capacity that it's designed for. And on the Orange Line, it's about a 30% increase in capacity. That's a wonderful thing, we think, because if the T can make those changes, and the T is very focused on this, that means that the T as an organization culturally will realize getting more people on the trains is a good thing because it brings them more fares, which means it can spend more on upgrades, and we can start a virtuous cycle rather than chasing our tail as we have been for the last, you tell me, Chris, how many decades? I don't say how many years, how many decades? So we think those are two very important projects. The one thing I would note, just as an asterisk, thus far we've not seen the contemplation of changing out the power lines on the Red Line and the Orange Line to the level we would like to see. Extremely important. 40% of the failures of trains on the Red Line are not due to signals, not due to track, it's due to power lines. So we got to get everybody on board to do not just signals, but also power lines. It's an important piece of this.
Thank you very much for being with us.
Thank you.
Jim Stergios from the Pioneer Institute.